We're going to talk the next little hour about teaching ethics in the digital space to technologists, or teaching ethics, broadly speaking, about data and technology. And I'm going to introduce our panel and let them introduce the work that they're doing. We have Devin and Doug and Liz and Marcus. And I'm going to let them talk about the dynamic things that they're doing, and then they're going to answer a few questions, and then we're going to give you a few questions. So like I said, there's lots of spaces to move up if you want to have a more intimate conversation. I'm a teacher, can you tell? And then we're going to go forward. So Devin, will you start by telling us what you do?
So I am the CEO and co-founder of a nonprofit called We Build Black. So essentially we are a community of technologists that are empowering and educating the Black community for the purpose of socioeconomic change. So the way that we go about that is by throwing conferences. We actually threw a conference here this year for Black Women in Tech. We have a weekly Saturday meetup called Black Software Engineers of NYC that you can just type in Black Software Engineer on Google, be like one of the first things you see. And yeah, we do a lot of code assistance. We have a Slack group. We are moving into schools now to start teaching programs in there as well. So yeah, that's essentially what we try to do.
Hi everyone, my name is Stella Sing. I wear a couple of hats. I teach, do some research, as well as work in the tech industry itself. I find education and really this is a great panel to be able to speak to, because we talked about a lot of the issues around tech ethics today, but education really prepares us for tomorrow. So this is a really exciting time to be in both spaces. I see education as a really aspect of, especially in the tech area, as a bit of matchmaking and relationship building. So we have to be able to create the tech that does social good, but then also create the tech developers that are going to be able to teach that tech to be able to do good as well. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited about and being able to do.
Hi everyone, I'm Liz Schiller. I'm a law librarian at the University of Richmond School of Law. I teach legal research 1 and 2, and I'm also working on developing a course in technology and the law. My own background before coming to the University of Richmond, when I was in law school myself, I got really interested in technology as a tool for access to justice, and spent some time in evidence-based government and how technology ethics issues and information ethics issues around technology sort of influence that. So we're working on sort of building that up at the school where I am. They want to be leaders in this space with we have a journal of law and technology and things like that. So we're sort of working on how do we both explicitly teach students and with these instructional modules that we're developing, but then also thinking a lot about how do we model this behavior for our students, and especially training lawyers, right? They're the ones that are going to put the boundaries on some of these things that technologists are doing. So looking at that both internal to the profession and then how law regulates the technology sector generally.
So that's a lot to follow up. Shout out to y'all for doing amazing things. My name is Marcus. I'm an educator for Global Kids, the digital learning and leadership team. I turned my chair so I could see everyone in the panel and then realized I was giving you my back, so I'm sorry. So yeah, a couple hats, like you said, educator slash curriculum writer slash trainer for Global Kids. And sort of what I do there is I develop curriculum around services such as Scratch or Unity, and we go into different elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools around New York City and DC, and hopefully soon Houston, to try and teach kind of how to create educational or technology-based projects that are ethical by nature. So by training, my undergrad was in English, so by training I did mostly literacy lessons, and so I bring a lot of that into my technology classes so that the theory is more important than the actual operation, and I think that that's how I've been trying to use ethics in my rooms.
Great, thank you. So just so we know who we're talking to, if you're a student, do you mind raising your hand? Could you raise your hand? Hi, students. If you're an academic, can you raise your hand? Oh, hi, fellow academics. If you're not either one of those, can you raise your hand? Oh, hello, regular civilians. You're so lucky. You're so lucky that you're not either one of those. So we're about a third. That's great. Thank you. So the first question that we thought we would take apart a little bit, I actually have one sort of small point, right? We're an education panel, or a panel about educating for technology. We heard in the keynotes, if you have lasted here since the morning, that there's this spreadsheet floating around Twitter. It's a great spreadsheet. It's open. It's a Google Doc. If you find, it's Cassie, I don't remember her last name. If you send me a note, I can email it to you. That it's a spreadsheet of the courses about tech ethics. It's a living document. People edit it all the time. But if you look at that spreadsheet, there are very few courses that are situated in CS programs. And I think that that's something we should consider as we're having this conversation. One, and then the other thing I sort of want us to consider as we're talking about how we're going to educate ethical and just technologists is that there's a lot of conversation and allied conversation in the data science world about how we educate ethical data scientists. And one of the programs that's held up at Berkeley and at the University of Washington, where they're educating all of their undergrads in one data science course, or all of their undergrads take one data science course with an open source book, is that there's no ethics in that open source book. Sorry. So we can marinate on that, and I hope we'll come back to that as an idea. That's not really a question, it's a statement. So panelists, tell us about the strategies you're using now to develop ethical tech skills in your students and your employees, or in your the people that you're touching in your work. What strategies are you using?
Okay, so I can start off. First, can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm used to using my teacher voice, so sometimes I just want to be like yelling at the room without the mic, so I'm trying to like balance my tone. So mostly what I teach is, our team is not that big, but all of us have different specialties. I'm mostly working with video game design in Scratch and in Unity, which is very multidisciplinary. If you bring it into an after-school program, I meet with all of my students probably once a week. And so they have a lot of things that they're responsible for doing. So when it comes down to strategies, like I said, it's all about the theory. I'll tell a story that I actually told a couple of people when I first met them. It was my introductory story, and I think it works for this question, so I'm gonna use it again. So my students wanted to create a game about a zombie apocalypse. And we can't have blood and gore in a school project, right? Anybody who like walks into my room and sees me like developing zombies on this computer game, right? The entire administration is gonna be like, why'd we hire this guy? So what I did instead is they were really adamant on creating this game. And so what we did instead is we took the concept and we threw it on its head. We did some community research. We looked around the community. We found some kind of issues that lied in the community. And basically I was asking them like, what is a zombie, right? Like, let's do some like literary work and just think about this for a while. And basically what they said is that it's a plague to a community. And so I was like, what is plaguing this community, and how do we turn those things into zombies? And what we noticed was that the food in the community was very lacking of healthy options. They had a whole bunch of cultural and diverse options for food, but literally in order to get to the healthy options, you would have to walk about half a mile to go from one store that had like fresh produce to another store of fresh produce. And so we created a geolocative game that would teach you that concept, because it would force you to actually walk to complete the actual game. And so what we did is we set up like, there was a story behind it. So there was an experiment, a machine blew up, and people became what they ate, right? So whatever your habitual eating habits were, that would be your zombie. And so like if you were eating a bunch of cheeseburgers and constantly eating a lot of unhealthy foods, right, then that means you would be a zombie. And if you were eating mostly healthy foods, then you would be an healthy ally that could kind of try to like help the bacteria and nutrition to turn you back into a person. And that was the story for the game. But the learned lesson through playing the game is that you actually need to, it's a cell phone based game, so you would actually need to step into the community to actually play it. And what you do is you recruit these healthy food allies, sort of like in Pokemon, and then you can take on these negative foods and change and balance out your nutrition. The learned lesson there is that they're walking around this community, and it takes about 2 hours to complete the game all the way through, because you notice how far away all of the healthy options are from each other. So in order to collect your healthy allies, you need to do a lot of walking. So when it came down to development, just to actually answer the question, they had to create their own character sprites, so all of the artwork was student work. All of the coding is student work. All of the game designing was student work. We use like industry level advice and industry level tools for them to be able to create this game. And by the end of the year, they were able to showcase it and spread the code out to anyone else in the school so that everyone would be able to play it. So now everyone is aware that they are eating unhealthily without noticing that the community is that way. So, yeah.
So there are a couple different things going on at my school to sort of teach future lawyers to use technology responsibly and even inspire those who might be interested in being like legal technologists. There are the doctrinal classes that might talk about, explicitly be about copyright, intellectual privacy, or intellectual property, privacy, cybersecurity, things like that. And then also sort of the more formal rules of professional responsibility. I have some colleagues that are doing really great work talking about how duties of competence and technological competence, relate to lawyers' traditional responsibilities of confidentiality, client information, other things like how these interact, right? One of the things that I think is most interesting is actually more in sort of the consciousness raising space with legal research tools and legal service deliverables. So when I teach legal research, for example, there's some questions around the legal research providers and everyone's access to law. Are we creating an access to justice problem when even just accessing the law that everyone is supposed to comply with and is, we're all subject to this. But many of those services are very, very expensive, and this creates limits on the kind of clients that lawyers are able to help, even if they wanted to, right? But yet we have to train students to use these tools. This is the reality of the space as it is now. There are other competitors that are up and coming. There are also some ethical issues around these research services as it relates to like what are they doing with the information in your search term, right? So like if you're maybe working with the vulnerable population, recently, for example, one of these legal research services, there was a little bit of a scandal because they also have a division of their business that sells information to law enforcement, including to ICE, right? So do lawyers have to be mindful of this, right? Like you need to use these tools to serve your clients. I'm sorry, it was related to immigration. In case it wasn't clear, I shouldn't use acronyms. So if you are representing a client who might have immigration issues, is it a problem to use a research service provider